Officer Derek Hayes threw the hot cup of coffee straight into the face of a quiet black man sitting alone. The liquid splashed across Jamal Thompson's jacket, the steam rising as he blinked but didn't move. The entire diner froze. Hayes stood over him, hand on his holster, sneering. "Now you're awake. Soldier boy, show me your ID before I drag you out myself." That was the moment the room went silent, the air heavy with fear and disbelief. Before we begin this story, tell us where you're watching from, subscribe to the channel, and please, leave a like if you believe that dignity and respect belong to every person, no matter what uniform they once wore. Jamal didn't raise his voice. He wiped the dripping coffee from his sleeve and looked up at the officer. "You done?" he asked softly. That tone, steady, worn, but unshaken, made Hayes angrier. "Don't get smart with me. You think being a veteran makes you special?" Hayes barked. Jamal answered quietly. "No, it just means I've seen worse men than you." Maria Gonzalez, the waitress, froze behind the counter, her hands trembling. She'd served Jamal every Wednesday for years. "Officer," she said, her voice shaking, "he comes here all the time. He's done nothing wrong." Hayes turned sharply. "You want to lose your job? Sweetheart, Frank Rossi, the diner's owner, came from the kitchen. That's enough. Derek, you're not gonna harass my customer in my place." Hayes shot him a glare. "He's trespassing." Frank's tone hardened. "No, he's eating breakfast." Hayes ignored him, stepping closer to Jamal. "Stand up, hands where I can see them." His partner, Officer Lisa Patel, hesitated. She knew this didn't feel right, but her silence was safer. Jamal stayed seated, calm, unafraid. "You really want to arrest me for eating eggs?" Hayes sneered. "For refusing an officer's order? Now, let's see that ID." Jamal reached into his jacket slowly and handed over a worn VA card. Hayes looked at it and smirked. "Veteran." "Huh? You got a lot of stories. I bet. Some of them even true?" Jamal's voice dropped lower. "3 tours, Afghanistan, Bronze Star, lost more friends than I can count. You can check if you want." Hayes grinned. "Maybe I will. After I finish my coffee that you're paying for?" Lisa Patel's stomach twisted. She looked at Jamal, seeing the calm in his eyes. A man used to battles that didn't involve guns anymore. She wanted to say something, but Hayes had a reputation for making life hell for any partner who crossed him. So, she stayed silent. Jamal picked up his old phone, cracked but working. He didn't raise it high. He just pressed one number and said quietly, "It's happening again." Hayes frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" He snatched the phone from Jamal's hand. A woman's voice came through instantly, cold and firm. "Jamal, where are you?" Hayes barked into the phone. "Who is this?" The answer came like a gunshot. Assistant Director Elena Vargas, Department of Justice. Everyone froze. Maria gasped. Frank's eyes widened. Even Patel's face drained of color. Hayes's arrogance faltered. "This isn't what it looks like," he stammered. Vargas's voice cut through. "Good. Then you won't mind if I review your body cam footage?" Hayes's eyes dropped to his vest. The small red light was blinking, recording everything. Jamal looked at him, calm as ever. "You might want to smile for the camera." "Officer?" Hayes's jaw tightened. "You think this saves you?" Jamal answered. "I don't need saving." For a long moment, no one spoke. The diner was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the corner. Patel took a step back. "Derek," she whispered. "Turn it off," Hayes hissed. "Shut up." But Patel couldn't move her eyes from Jamal. There was something about his calm, the way he refused to meet anger with fear. It made her question everything she'd learned in the academy. Hayes muttered into the phone again. "This is harassment. You people don't understand what we deal with every day," Vargas replied evenly. And you don't understand who you just laid hands on. Jamal finally stood, his posture straight, steady, quiet authority in every movement. I fought for this country. He said, I don't need your permission to eat breakfast. Frank stepped forward. He's right. Derek, you crossed the line. Hayes pointed at him. Stay out of it. Frank. But no one was listening anymore. Maria moved beside Jamal. You need to leave him alone. Patel took a breath. He's right. Derek, let it go. Hayes glared at her. Whose side are you on? Patel hesitated. The right one. Hayes's face turned red with anger, but before he could speak, his radio crackled. All units. Be advised. DOJ oversight en route to Rossi's diner. Stand by. The entire diner heard it. Hayes froze. Jamal didn't gloat. He simply looked tired. You never learn, do you? He said softly. Patel lowered her gaze. Ashamed. Hayes's hands twitched near his belt. But he knew it was over. Frank crossed his arms. You're done. Derek. Hayes muttered something under his breath and stormed out the door. The silence that followed was thick with relief and disbelief. Maria placed a hand on Jamal's arm. Are you okay? He nodded. I've been through worse. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke, not from fear but from the weight of memory. She didn't ask more. She didn't need to. The phone on the counter buzzed again. Elena Vargas's voice came through. Jamal, sit tight. I'm sending someone. You did the right thing. He exhaled slowly. I'm just tired of being treated like I don't belong in the country I fought for. Maria looked at him. Her eyes filled with sympathy. You do belong, she said softly. And today, they'll see it. Outside. Sirens began to echo faintly in the distance, inside the diner. The tension finally began to ease, but something had changed. What happened that morning wasn't just another act of harassment. It was the spark that would ignite a movement, one that neither the officers nor the city of Chicago could ignore. And for Jamal Thompson, the man everyone once overlooked. It was the beginning of justice, long overdue. 15 minutes after that shocking moment, Rossi's diner was swarming with tension. Officer Derek Hayes paced by the door, humiliated, muttering under his breath. His partner, Lisa Patel, stood near the counter, silent, her conscience splitting in two. The DOJ oversight team hadn't yet arrived, but the damage was done. The entire diner had witnessed his outburst, and now whispers spread among customers like wildfire. Jamal Thompson sat back in his booth, eyes steady, as if he'd already lived this scene 100 times. But inside, his heart was pounding. PTSD had taught him to hide fear behind calm, to breathe through memories that could crush him if he let them in. Hayes slammed his hand on the counter. You think calling the feds is gonna scare me? Old man, he barked. Jamal didn't move. No, officer, he said evenly. I think your own camera already did. Frank Rossi, the owner, tried to defuse the situation. Derek, you should go. You made your point. Hayes turned on him. You stay out of this. You think you can tell me what to do in my city? Maria Gonzalez, the waitress, took a cautious step forward. It's not your city, she said, voice trembling but firm. It's everyone's. Hayes snapped around, pointing at her. You better watch that mouth, sweetheart. Patel flinched. She'd seen Hayes lose control before. His temper wasn't new, but this was different. There was fear in his eyes now, the kind that comes when authority begins to crumble. Jamal leaned back slightly, voice calm but firm. You've already shown everyone who you are. You don't have to prove it again. Hayes's jaw tightened. You think you're some kind of hero? Jamal's reply came slow, deliberate. I don't need to be a hero. I just need to be treated like a man. That simple sentence hit Patel like a punch. She'd joined the force believing she could make a difference, but standing there, She realized she was part of something broken. Hayes was the embodiment of what she'd quietly ignored for years. Abuse hidden behind a badge. She finally spoke. "Derek, stop. He's done nothing wrong." Hayes glared at her. "Whose side are you on?" "The right one," she said quietly. Hayes grabbed Jamal's phone from the table, waving it like a weapon. "You think you're smart, calling your fancy friends at the DOJ? Let's see how tough you are when I check that record of yours." Jamal didn't flinch. "Check it," he said. "You'll find a Bronze Star, 2 commendations, and an honorable discharge, and while you're at it, check your own complaint file." The words landed hard. Patel froze. She knew what that meant. Hayes had been reported before. 12 complaints over 15 years, most dismissed quietly, hidden behind lack of evidence. But this time, there was evidence. The blinking red light on his vest wouldn't lie. Maria's hands shook as she poured water for Jamal. "You want me to call someone else?" she whispered. He shook his head. Not yet. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, but his mind drifted. Flashes of sand, screams, and gunfire from Afghanistan slicing through his memory. For a moment, he wasn't in the diner. He was back on that road in Kandahar, dragging Sergeant Marcus Lee from a burning truck as mortars exploded around them. He'd promised Marcus he'd live a quiet life after the war. But peace, he thought bitterly, had never been promised to men like him. Hayes's radio crackled. "Unit 14, status check. DOJ liaison approaching." Hayes cursed under his breath. "We're fine," he barked into the mic. False alarm. Patel looked at him in disbelief. "You just lied to dispatch. You didn't see anything," he snapped. "I'm handling this." Jamal slowly stood up, his voice calm but cutting. "You're not handling anything. Officer, you're losing it." Hayes's face twisted. "You better sit down before I—" "Before you what?" Jamal interrupted. "Shoot me for eating breakfast?" The diner went dead silent again. Everyone's eyes were on Hayes. His hand hovered near his holster, but Patel stepped between them. "Derek, enough! You're not doing this again." Hayes hesitated, realizing the word again had slipped. Maria's eyes widened. "Again? You mean he's done this before?" Patel froze, instantly regretting it. Hayes's face went red. "Watch yourself. Lisa." The door opened suddenly, and 2 plainclothes DOJ agents entered, badges flashing. One spoke sharply. "Officers, step aside. This area is now under federal review," Hayes stammered. "You can't just—" The agent cut him off. "We can, and we are." Patel quietly handed over her body cam data card, her hands shaking. Hayes glared at her. "Traitor." He hissed. "No," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I'm done covering for you." Jamal sat back down as the agents questioned the officers. Maria brought him another cup of coffee. "Free this time." "You okay?" she asked softly. "I'm used to worse," he said. "But thank you." One of the DOJ agents turned to Jamal. "Sir, Assistant Director Vargas is reviewing the footage. We'll need your statement." Jamal nodded. "You'll get it." Hayes was escorted outside, his protests muffled by the closing door. The tension began to lift, replaced by disbelief. Maria whispered to Frank. "He's finished." Frank nodded. "About time." Patel stayed behind, slumped against the wall, eyes filled with guilt. Jamal looked at her. "You don't have to go down with him." She met his gaze. "I already did. The day I stayed quiet." The DOJ agents reviewed the diner's security camera, syncing it with Hayes's body cam. Within minutes, they had the full picture. Hayes's aggression, his threats, and Jamal's calm restraint. One agent muttered, "This is going viral the second it leaks." He was right. Outside, a teenage girl, Sophie Kim, was already recording on her phone from across the street. She'd caught the whole argument through the window, and within an hour, her clip would hit TikTok, gathering millions of views. Jamal leaned his head against the booth, feeling exhaustion settle in. He'd done nothing wrong, but he felt the familiar ache of being treated like he had. Maria placed her hand over his. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. "I didn't want to fight." He replied, "Just breakfast." Patel straightened her shoulders and approached him. "Mr. Thompson," she said softly. "For what it's worth." "I'm sorry." Jamal looked at her for a long moment. "Then prove it. Tell the truth." She nodded slowly. "I will. Outside." The DOJ car lights flashed red and blue, reflecting off the diner window. Hayes sat in the back of the cruiser, face pale, realizing his career was collapsing. Inside, Jamal sipped his coffee and exhaled. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in years, it wasn't one he'd have to fight alone. When Assistant Director Elena Vargas received the call from Jamal, she was in her Chicago field office, mid-briefing with federal staff. The sound of his voice, steady but heavy, made her stop mid-sentence. "It's happening again," he'd said. The same phrase he used years ago during combat when a mission went wrong. Her chest tightened. "Patch me through to local law enforcement. Now." She ordered her aide within seconds. The DOJ radio link lit up with chatter. Incident at Rossi's Diner, South Side. Officers involved. Vargas's instincts took over. She grabbed her coat and was out the door before anyone could stop her. For Elena, this wasn't just another civil rights call. This was personal. Jamal Thompson had saved her life once, 15 years ago in Afghanistan, dragging her from a collapsed outpost under enemy fire. She owed him more than words. She owed him justice, inside the diner. The tension lingered like smoke. Jamal sat still, his body calm but his mind in turmoil. PTSD had trained him to measure every sound, every movement. His gaze stayed fixed on the reflection in the napkin holder, watching Patel's uneasy posture and the way Hayes's fingers twitched. He knew the signs of a man losing control, but he also knew something else. Help was coming, Maria whispered. "You really called the Department of Justice?" Jamal nodded once. "She's on her way." Frank Rossi shook his head in disbelief. "You mean the Elena Vargas? The one from the news?" Jamal looked up, his voice quiet but certain. "She doesn't play games." Across town, Vargas's black SUV cut through traffic, sirens off but pace relentless. She'd already seen the first stream of data from the body cam auto-sync system. Footage transmitted to the DOJ cloud before the officers could delete it. Hayes's voice filled the car speakers, his threats, his mocking tone, his arrogance. Vargas's jaw clenched. "He doesn't know who he's dealing with," she muttered. Her assistant, Agent Carla Mendoza, looked at her. "You sure you want to handle this personally?" Vargas's reply was sharp. "Jamal Thompson saved 15 of my men. He won't be humiliated in his own country." Back at the diner, Hayes tried to reassert control. "You people think you've won? When this all blows over, he's still a homeless bum, and I'm still the law." Maria slammed her notepad down. "No, you're not the law. You're what people fear when there is none," Patel whispered. "Stop it." "Derek." He ignored her. "Shut your mouth before you join him." Patel's stomach churned. Her whole career flashed before her, years of silence, of ignoring misconduct for the sake of team unity, but watching Jamal sit there, unarmed and unflinching. Something inside her snapped. "I can't do this anymore," she said under her breath. Hayes glared at her. "You'll regret that." Jamal's phone buzzed again. He picked it up and heard Elena's voice. "I'm 3 minutes out. Stay calm. Don't engage." He exhaled slowly. "I've done this before," he said softly. "Just not on home soil?" Her voice softened. "You won't have to this time." 3 minutes later, the diner door swung open. Elena Vargas walked in, tall, composed, wearing her DOJ credentials visibly. The quiet authority in her stride silenced the room. "Officers," she said firmly, "step away from Mr. Thompson." Hayes blinked, stunned. "Who the hell are you?" She raised her badge. "Assistant Director Vargas, Department of Justice." Her eyes locked on Jamal. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. "Just tired." She turned to Hayes. "Badge number and full name." He hesitated. "You got a warrant for that?" Her tone sharpened. "You're on active duty, and this establishment is a public space under federal oversight for civil rights violations. That body cam you're wearing uploads every 45 seconds to my servers. Do you really want to pretend this didn't happen?" Patel's mouth fell open. She hadn't realized how advanced the DOJ's system was. Hayes's face went pale. "You can't just barge in here." Vargas's voice remained calm but lethal. "I can. And I did." Frank folded his arms behind the counter. "Quietly smiling," Maria whispered. "Finally. Someone who scares him." Jamal sat silently, hands folded, his breathing steady. Elena turned back to him. "You did the right thing calling me." He nodded, didn't know who else to trust. She gave a small nod. "You trusted the right one." Then she looked at Patel. "Officer Patel, do you wish to make a statement?" Patel hesitated, fear and guilt written across her face. "Ma'am, I didn't stop him. I should have." Vargas studied her for a moment. "You'll get your chance to do the right thing now. Cooperate fully, and you may still serve honorably, but cover for him again, and I'll have your badge before sundown." Patel swallowed hard and nodded. "Understood," Hayes finally snapped. "This is harassment. You DOJ people think you can ruin careers with one video? You don't know how this city works." Elena stepped closer, her eyes cold. "No, Officer Hayes, you don't know how the law works. You violated Title 18, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. That's a federal offense. So yes, I can ruin your career. In fact, you already did that yourself." Maria's hands trembled as she refilled Jamal's coffee. "You want sugar, sweetheart?" He smiled faintly. "No, ma'am, just peace." Elena heard him and felt a lump in her throat. It reminded her of that night in Afghanistan, when Jamal, bleeding from his shoulder, had whispered the same thing after saving her life. No medals, just peace. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Sophie Kim, the teenager who'd recorded the earlier confrontation, was streaming live from her phone. "This is what's happening in Chicago right now," she said to her followers. "A veteran just stood up to a racist cop, and the DOJ showed up within minutes. Her video hit 100,000 views. Inside." The officers' radios began to crackle as the precinct received calls from the mayor's office. The situation had officially escalated beyond local control. Elena ordered the officers escorted outside for questioning. "You'll be contacted by Internal Affairs within the hour," she said. "If you resist, you'll be detained." Hayes tried one last protest. "You can't prove harassment." Elena gestured to the blinking camera. "That device disagrees." As they were led out, Hayes turned back toward Jamal. "You think you won, old man? You'll still be nothing tomorrow." Jamal met his eyes. "Tomorrow, I'll still have my dignity. What will you have?" The door closed behind them. The diner exhaled as if it had been holding its breath all morning. Maria sat down at the next booth, shaking her head. "I can't believe what we just saw," Frank muttered. "Oh, I can. Been seeing this city eat good men alive for 50 years, just not today." Elena looked at Jamal again. "You need medical attention?" He shook his head. "Just time." She studied him for a moment longer. "You're not done yet," she said quietly. "This isn't just about you anymore." He nodded. "I know." Patel stood near the door, face pale. "Ma'am, If I come forward, can I fix what happened? Elena's tone softened. You can't undo it, but you can help expose it. Patel nodded slowly. Then I will. Outside. Sophie's video hit 1 million views. The clip showed Hayes throwing coffee, shouting threats, and Jamal's quiet defiance. The caption read, "They disrespected the wrong man." By evening, it would reach 2 million. By nightfall, protests would begin forming outside the precinct. As Jamal stepped outside into the cool Chicago air, Elena followed. "You sure you're ready for what comes next?" she asked. He looked at the crowd gathering at the end of the block, people holding phones, whispering, pointing. "After Afghanistan," he said quietly. "This doesn't scare me." Elena gave a small smile. "Then maybe it's time the city heard your story." He nodded once. "Not my story," he said. "Ours." And as he walked down the sidewalk, every phone camera turned toward him, capturing not just a man who'd endured injustice, but the beginning of something that could finally change it. By the time Jamal Thompson left the diner that afternoon, his name was already echoing across social media. The video, posted by 17-year-old Sophie Kim, spread faster than wildfire, within an hour. It hit 200,000 views by the 4th hour. It had crossed 2 million. The caption under her post read, "They disrespected a homeless black veteran. Watch what happens when justice walks in." People couldn't stop sharing it. The clip showed the exact moment Hayes threw hot coffee, Jamal's calm reaction, and the stunning entrance of Assistant Director Elena Vargas. It was raw, undeniable, and deeply human. Across the country, people were enraged and inspired. Comments poured in. "He's a hero. This is what quiet strength looks like. Where can we help him?" At Rossi's diner, Maria kept replaying the footage on her phone. He didn't even raise his voice. She whispered, "Not once." Frank stood beside her, shaking his head. "That man's got more honor than half the people who ever walked in this place." Outside, a small crowd began forming near the entrance. Students, veterans, neighbors, all wanting to see where it happened. Some held signs that read, "Justice for Jamal" and "Respect our veterans." Meanwhile, Jamal sat quietly on a bench across the street, trying to make sense of what was unfolding. His phone, once silent for years, wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, voicemails, messages from strangers flooded in. Then, among the chaos, one number made his breath catch, his daughter Zoe. It had been almost 5 years since they last spoke. He hesitated before answering. "Dad?" Her voice came through, soft but emotional. Jamal froze. "Zoe?" She sniffled. "I saw the video. I didn't know you were still in Chicago." His voice cracked slightly. "I'm still here. Baby, been trying to get by." There was a pause before she said, "I'm proud of you." He exhaled slowly, the kind of release only a father could understand. Back downtown, journalist Alex Rivera, known for exposing police misconduct, was already on the story. He aired a segment titled "The Diner Incident, Chicago's Hidden Shame" in the report. He detailed Derek Hayes' history. 12 complaints filed for racial profiling and harassment, all dismissed without discipline. "This isn't an isolated act," Alex said on camera. "It's a pattern, protected by silence." He included an interview with Maria, who said, "That man didn't deserve what happened. He's fought for this country, and he got treated like he was nothing." The clip gained traction on national news within hours. At the DOJ, Elena Vargas was coordinating next steps. She knew the storm was coming, and she was ready. "We're filing an immediate civil rights investigation," she told her team. "Full review of body cam procedures, officer complaints, and retaliation protocols," one of her aides asked. "Should we make a public statement?" Elena shook her head. "Not yet. The truth will speak for itself." Officer Derek Hayes, meanwhile, was unraveling. He watched the viral footage from his precinct office, face pale, The calls from superiors came in one after another: internal affairs, the mayor's office, and even the governor's liaison. "You're suspended. Effective immediately," his captain told him coldly. "Turn in your badge and weapon." Hayes slammed the phone down, rage boiling inside him. "A video? That's all it takes now?" he muttered. His wife called moments later, her voice trembling. "Derek, they showed it on the news. My job called. I can't." He cut her off. "Don't you start with me." But before he could continue, she hung up. That silence hurt more than the headlines. Lisa Patel sat in her apartment, watching the same footage. Her hands shook as she saw herself standing beside Hayes, saying nothing. She turned off the TV, tears streaming down her face. Guilt gnawed at her chest. She'd wanted to believe she could stay silent and survive, but now she saw the cost. The phone rang. It was Internal Affairs. She stared at it before answering. "Officer Patel," the voice said, "we'll need a statement about what happened at Rossi's diner." Her reply was quiet but firm. "You'll have it, and this time, I'll tell the truth." At the same time, Sophie Kim, sitting in her small bedroom surrounded by textbooks and LED lights, couldn't believe what she'd started. "Mom!" she called out. "It's on the news!" Her mother peeked in, smiling. "You did a good thing." "Sophie." But Sophie shook her head. "No, Jamal did. I just made sure people saw it." She scrolled through the comments. Veterans offering donations, community leaders asking for interviews, thousands calling for change. She clicked on one link. A GoFundMe started by a local activist named Tyrone Brooks. The title read, "Help a Hero Find a Home," within hours. It had raised $5,000 by midnight. That number would hit 500,000. Jamal didn't know about the donations yet. He just sat in a temporary shelter that Elena arranged, thinking about Zoe's voice and the chaos he never wanted. He'd never cared about attention. He only wanted peace. But deep down, he knew this moment wasn't about him anymore. It was about every man and woman who'd been disrespected after giving their lives to a system that forgot them. As the evening news aired, the city of Chicago began to shift. Protesters gathered outside the 15th precinct with signs and candles. Justice for Jamal became a chant that echoed down the streets. Elena watched from her office window as reporters surrounded the building. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. "This is Vargas," a voice replied. "It's the mayor. We need to talk." Meanwhile, Jamal's phone buzzed again. This time, it was Zoe calling from New York. "Dad, you're all over the internet," she said with a nervous laugh. "People want to interview you." He chuckled softly. "I don't have much to say." "That's not true," she said. "You've got more to say than all of them combined. For the first time in years." Jamal smiled. "Maybe. But right now, I just want to see you again." She paused, then whispered, "You will, by midnight." #Justice for Jamal had trended nationwide with over 500,000 tweets. Celebrities, veterans, and even members of Congress commented on the video. One tweet stood out. "The measure of a hero isn't his uniform. It's his dignity when the world tests it," at Rossi's diner. Maria turned off the lights, looking out the window at the growing crowd. He didn't even ask for this. She whispered. Frank nodded. Heroes never do. Outside, the cameras flashed, the chants grew louder, and the city that once ignored a homeless veteran now looked to him as a symbol of decency, courage, and quiet strength. And as dawn neared, Jamal lay awake, watching the first light creep through the shelter's window. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt humbled, exhausted, and uncertain. But deep down, one truth gave him peace. For the first time in years, someone had listened. And that, he thought, was more powerful than anything he'd seen on a battlefield by sunrise. Chicago's South Side was alive with the sound of footsteps, chants, and camera shutters. What began as one diner's quiet injustice had become a national story. Outside the 15th precinct, hundreds of people filled the streets holding signs that read, "I am Jamal. Respect our veterans," and "End police abuse." Journalists lined the barricades, reporters spoke live on national networks, and helicopters hovered above the crowd. In the center stood Tyrone Brooks, a local activist known for his calm leadership during city protests. "We're not here to destroy," he told the crowd through a megaphone. "We're here to demand dignity, for Jamal, and for every soul this system forgets." The people cheered, raising candles, their breath visible in the morning chill. Within hours, the protest reached City Hall, forcing the mayor to respond. Inside a small office nearby, Jamal watched the live news feed from an old laptop provided by the shelter. He didn't know how to process what he was seeing. The man who'd only wanted breakfast was now the face of a movement. "They're doing this for you," said Dr. Naomi Ellis, a psychologist from the Veterans Affairs office who sat across from him. "No," Jamal replied softly. "They're doing it for themselves. I just reminded them how easy it is to forget." Naomi studied him for a moment. "You're not just a reminder. You're proof that quiet strength can move mountains." Elena Vargas had been in meetings since dawn. The DOJ investigation had widened overnight. "We've confirmed Officer Hayes' misconduct isn't isolated," her assistant reported. "Internal Affairs found 6 other complaints with matching behavior, all buried." Elena nodded grimly. "Reopen them all, every file, and tell the mayor if he values his office, he'll cooperate." She leaned back, exhaustion tugging at her eyes. But her voice remained steel. This city's about to learn that silence costs more than speaking up. Meanwhile, Officer Lisa Patel sat alone in her apartment, staring at the subpoena on her table. The words Federal Civil Rights Division stared back at her like a mirror of guilt. Her mind replayed the incident at the diner over and over. The look on Jamal's face, the sound of Hayes' voice, her own silence. She reached for her phone, her hands trembling. She dialed a number she never thought she'd call. "Mr. Thompson," she said quietly when Jamal answered. "It's me. Officer Patel." There was a long pause before he replied. "You finally decided to talk." She swallowed hard. "I can't keep quiet anymore. I'm meeting a DOJ agent tonight. I have something they need to see." Jamal's tone remained calm. "Then do what's right. Not for me. For every person who couldn't call for help." Her voice cracked slightly. "You don't hate me for what I did." He paused. "No. Hate won't fix this. Truth will." That evening, Patel met a DOJ investigator in a dimly lit parking garage downtown. She handed him a flash drive. "It's everything," she said. "Emails, body cam logs, incident reports Hayes tried to delete. He bragged about them." The agent asked. "Why now?" Patel exhaled. "Because I couldn't sleep. Because that man looked me in the eye and didn't see hate in me. Even after what I let happen." The agent nodded. "You understand this could end your career?" Patel gave a faint, tired smile. "It's already over. This is the only way I can live with it." By the next morning, leaked memos hit the press. Alex Rivera, the journalist who had broken the first report, published an exposé titled "The Hidden Files of Chicago PD." The story revealed that Hayes' misconduct had been shielded by supervisors and quietly dismissed to protect departmental image. The article included Patel's anonymous testimony and screenshots of internal messages. Within hours, it was front-page news across the country. The backlash was immediate. City officials scrambled, and the mayor's office released a statement. "We are cooperating fully with federal authorities to ensure accountability." But it wasn't enough. The people wanted action. At noon, Mayor Reginald Ford stood behind a podium, cameras flashing in his face. "On behalf of this city," he began, I extend an apology to Mr. Jamal Thompson and to all veterans who've faced mistreatment." His words were met with a mix of applause and skepticism. "We're implementing new oversight measures and reviewing all use of force complaints." But the crowd outside wasn't satisfied. Tyrone Brooks addressed them directly afterward. "Apologies don't feed the hungry or house the homeless," he shouted. "Justice does!" The chants grew louder, echoing through City Hall's marble corridors, at Rossi's diner. Maria and Frank had turned the small restaurant into a hub for volunteers. They served free meals to veterans and protesters alike. We started with one man who just wanted breakfast. Maria told a reporter, "Now look at this. Community." Frank nodded proudly. He reminded us what decency looks like. They didn't know that Jamal was quietly watching from the back booth, wearing a clean shirt and jacket Naomi had given him. He didn't want recognition. He wanted to see if people would still care when the cameras turned away. Later that afternoon, Elena called him to meet her at the precinct. "You need to hear this in person," she said. When he arrived, she handed him a folder. "Officer Hayes, terminated. Department recommending criminal charges for civil rights violations. Officer Patel, resigned, cooperating as a federal witness." Jamal looked down at the paperwork, his expression unreadable. "She did the right thing," he said quietly. Elena nodded. "Because you gave her the chance outside." The protests had grown into something larger than outrage. It became unity. Churches opened doors for veterans. Students painted murals with Jamal's face beside the words, "Respect is a right." Donations kept pouring in. The fund now at over $500,000. Tyrone Brooks visited Jamal at the shelter that evening. "We're creating something called the Thompson Fund," he said proudly. "It'll help homeless veterans get housing, medical care, and counseling. You inspired that." Jamal smiled faintly. "Then make sure it's not about me. Make it about them by nightfall." The city skyline glowed with drone lights spelling justice for Jamal. It wasn't organized. It just happened. Strangers gathered in parks, holding candles and saying his name in gratitude, inside her car. Patel watched the lights from a distance, tears streaming down her face. She whispered, "I'm sorry," knowing Jamal would never see her, but hoping he somehow felt it. Elena sat in her office watching the same scene on the news. Her assistant asked. "You think this changes anything?" she replied. "Not everything, but it's a start. Across town." Maria closed up the diner, whispering to Frank. "He said he just wanted coffee, turns out. He gave this city its conscience back." Jamal stood outside under the night sky, hearing the faint echo of chanting from miles away. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man finally seen. For the first time in years. He wasn't invisible. He took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "It's not over, but it's enough for now." And as the city glowed with his story, one quiet truth settled deep inside him. Sometimes, one calm voice can shake the world louder than any shout ever could. 3 weeks had passed since that unforgettable morning at Rossi's diner, yet the city of Chicago was still trembling from its aftermath. Officer Derek Hayes had been fired, his name etched into every headline and talk show. Lawsuits piled up against him, civil, federal, and personal. His arrogance had collapsed into ruin. Reporters caught photos of him leaving the courthouse in a wrinkled coat, face hollow, his once certain stride replaced by a slow, bitter limp. His wife had filed for divorce, his pension was frozen, and his savings were gone. He'd taken a job as an overnight security guard at a warehouse on the outskirts of town, a cruel echo of the authority he once abused. Each night, sitting alone in the dim guard booth, Hayes replayed that diner footage over and over, hating Jamal Thompson for being the mirror he could no longer avoid. Yet, somewhere beneath the anger, he knew the truth. It wasn't Jamal who ruined him. It was himself. Lisa Patel's world had also shifted. She had left the force 2 days after the protests ended. Her resignation quiet but powerful. The department wanted to paint her as a traitor, but the DOJ saw her differently. A reluctant whistleblower who had finally done the right thing. When the media reached her, she refused interviews. "I'm not the story," she told them. "He is." In the weeks that followed, she joined a police reform organization, speaking privately with cadets about ethics, accountability, and the weight of silence. Each talk ended with the same line. Courage isn't just about drawing your weapon, it's about drawing the line. She was haunted by her part in Jamal's humiliation, but she found purpose in making sure no officer would repeat it, for Jamal. Life began to steady again. But peace came in pieces, thanks to the Thompson Fund organized by Tyrone Brooks and the community. He was offered a modest apartment near Bronzeville, a one-bedroom unit with sunlight, a bed, and quiet mornings. Dr. Naomi Ellis from the VA checked on him every few days, guiding him through therapy sessions that forced him to confront the ghosts he'd buried for years. "You've carried war longer than any man should," she told him gently. "Now it's time to carry life again." Jamal would nod, but his eyes always wandered, to the city skyline, to memories of brothers he lost, to the feeling that survival was its own kind of battle. One morning, while reading the paper in his new apartment, his phone rang. It was a number he hadn't seen in years. "Dad?" Zoe's voice came through, trembling but warm. He froze, his breath catching. "Zoe," he whispered, "you sound grown." She laughed softly through tears. "You sound the same, maybe a little older." He smiled, eyes misting. "That happens when you've lived outside too long." There was a pause. Then she said, "I'm flying in tomorrow. I want to see you." Jamal's throat tightened. "You don't have to. I want to." She interrupted. "You were right. I ran away from what I didn't understand, but when I saw what they did to you, something in me broke. You didn't deserve that. Dad, no one does." The next day, when Zoe arrived at the small apartment, she barely recognized him. His beard was trimmed, his posture straight, his eyes softer. For a long moment, they just stood there. Then she stepped forward and hugged him, and years of distance melted away. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you more," he replied. She looked around the room and smiled. "It's not much, but it's home," he said. "That's more than I had before." They spent the afternoon talking about her new job in New York, her fears, and his years of wandering between shelters and streets. When she asked why he never reached out, his answer was quiet. "I didn't want you to see me like that. I wanted you to remember the man who stood tall, not the one who couldn't find a roof." Zoe took his hand. "You're standing tall now. Dad, you always were. I just didn't see it." Later that week, Dr. Naomi Ellis invited Jamal to a community forum for veterans. At first, he refused. "I'm not a speaker," he said. "I'm just a man who got tired of being quiet." Naomi smiled. That's exactly who they need to hear. When he finally agreed, he expected a small group, but when he walked into the hall, hundreds of veterans, students, and reporters filled the seats. The crowd rose to their feet in applause. Jamal froze at the microphone, unsure how to begin. After a long pause, he said softly, "I never wanted fame, I wanted breakfast. But when a man's peace becomes someone else's threat, that's when we need to talk." The room fell silent, hanging on every word. "I've been angry for years," he continued. "Angry at the war, at the system, at myself. But anger is heavy. It doesn't heal. Only truth does." That morning, a cup of coffee became my battlefield, and the only weapon I had was patience. So if you ever feel invisible, just remember, being calm doesn't mean being weak. Sometimes it means you're stronger than they'll ever understand." When he finished, the audience stood again, clapping through tears. After the speech, Patel waited quietly at the back of the room. When Jamal saw her, he nodded slowly and walked over. "You came," he said softly. "I needed to." She replied, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to thank you for giving me a second chance to do the right thing." Jamal looked at her for a long moment, then said, "You already did." She smiled faintly. "I joined a reform group. I talk to recruits now." "Good," he said. "Teach them that power means responsibility, not superiority." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I will." Meanwhile, Derek Hayes watched the same event on television in his lonely guard booth. Jamal's calm voice echoed through the small radio. The former officer stared at the screen, his reflection flickering in the glass. "I destroyed myself," he muttered. When Jamal said the words "forgiveness is freedom" on stage, Hayes looked down at his hands, trembling, tired, and calloused. For the first time, he whispered something that sounded almost like prayer. "I'm sorry." The next morning, Elena Vargas met Jamal at the diner, the same booth, the same seat where everything began. But this time, the air was light. Maria brought them both coffee and smiled. "Feels different now," she said. "It is," Jamal replied. Elena looked around. "You realize this little place changed a city?" Jamal chuckled softly. "I didn't change the city, Elena. It changed itself when people started caring again," as they talked. Zoe walked in with flowers, placing them on the table. "For the woman who had my father's back," she said warmly. Elena smiled. "He's the one who never gave up." Jamal looked at both women, his voice quiet. "We all fought different battles. We just found each other at the end." That night, as Jamal walked home through the cool Chicago air, he stopped outside a mural painted on the side of a brick building. It showed him sitting at the diner table, calm and unbroken, with the words beneath, "Respect is not a favor, it's a right." He stared at it for a long moment, emotion tightening his chest. Then he smiled faintly, whispered, "It's enough," and walked on. For the first time in decades, Jamal felt peace not as something distant, but as something real. He had a home, his daughter, his dignity, and the quiet knowledge that sometimes the smallest act of patience can spark a revolution. And as the city lights glowed above him, he knew he'd finally found what war could never give him: redemption. A full month had passed since that morning at Rossi's diner. Yet Chicago still carried Jamal Thompson's story like a heartbeat. The protests had quieted, the headlines had faded, but something deeper remained: a collective awareness, a moral shift that couldn't be erased. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Jamal stood once again inside the diner, this time at the front, facing an audience of veterans, city officials, reporters, and ordinary citizens who had followed his journey from the start. The same booth where he once sat humiliated had been polished and framed behind him, a silent reminder of how one act of patience could alter the course of a city. Maria and Frank stood to his right, smiling proudly. Zoe sat in the front row, tears in her eyes. Elena Vargas leaned against the wall near the back, arms folded, her gaze steady and proud. The chatter faded as Jamal stepped up to the microphone. Wearing a clean white shirt and the same army jacket he'd worn that morning, he took a deep breath. "I'm no hero," he began, his voice firm but gentle. "I didn't plan to change anything. I just wanted a cup of coffee and a little respect." The crowd chuckled softly, then grew quiet again. "But sometimes, life chooses you when you're not looking." That morning, I met two people who saw a homeless man and forgot he was a soldier, a father, and a human being. They saw a stereotype. And the truth is, that kind of blindness has cost this country more souls than any war I ever fought in. His tone deepened. I fought overseas for freedom. But I learned that the real battle isn't out there. It's right here, in how we treat one another. He paused, scanning the crowd. I've been angry, bitter, broken. But anger doesn't build. It burns. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it frees you from it. I've spent too many nights fighting ghosts, of war, of poverty, of shame. And I realized something. Peace isn't about silence. It's about being seen. The room was silent, everyone leaning forward, every word landing like truth spoken from a wound that had finally healed. Jamal looked toward Zoe. I lost years with my daughter because I thought I had to carry my pain alone. I was wrong. No one heals in isolation. We heal together. When someone stops long enough to care, his voice cracked slightly. But he kept going. To every veteran, every man and woman who feels invisible. Your story matters. You matter. The crowd erupted into applause. When the clapping died down, Jamal continued softly. The officers who wronged me lost their jobs. But I didn't want revenge. What I wanted was change. And because of all of you, the protests, the voices, the videos, change is happening. The city council just passed new transparency laws. Every officer's body cam footage must be publicly accessible within 72 hours. No more hidden truths. And the Thompson Fund? It's already helped 20 veterans find homes this month. That's not me. That's us. Tyrone Brooks rose from his seat, nodding proudly. Maria wiped tears from her face, whispering, "That's our Jamal." Frank clapped loudly, calling out, "You'll always have coffee here." "Brother." The audience laughed warmly. Jamal smiled. "This city gave me pain, but it also gave me purpose. If one act of injustice can wake a nation, imagine what one act of compassion could do." He looked around, his eyes soft but bright. Respect isn't charity. It's a right, and dignity isn't earned. It's recognized. So the next time you see someone you're tempted to judge, remember this: every person you overlook might just be the one who saves you. The room erupted again, a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Zoe rose, walked up to the podium, and hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you." "Dad," she whispered, "you didn't just survive, you changed the world." Jamal held her close, whispering, "No, baby, we changed it together, after the event." Elena approached him quietly. "You could have disappeared after all this," she said. "Most people would have." He smiled faintly. "Most people haven't been given a second chance." She extended her hand. "I'll be watching from D.C. The DOJ wants to use this case as a national model for accountability. You started something bigger than Chicago." He nodded, shaking her hand. "Then let's finish it right." That evening, Jamal returned to his apartment. On the small table sat a framed photo of him and Zoe at the diner, her arm around him, both smiling. Next to it was a letter from the mayor thanking him for his courage and a folded flag from his old unit, signed by Sergeant Marcus Lee with the words, "Still got your back." "Brother." Jamal sat down, breathing deeply, his heart calm for the first time in decades. Outside his window, the city lights shimmered like quiet applause. Somewhere downtown, protesters still carried signs for other causes. Inspired by his story, in Bronzeville, a homeless veteran was moving into a small apartment paid for by the Thompson Fund. And at Rossi's diner, Frank kept a plaque above Jamal's old booth that read, "Here sat a man who reminded us all what respect means." Jamal poured himself a cup of coffee, leaned back in his chair, and smiled. "It's funny," he murmured to himself. "All I wanted was breakfast." He took a sip, looked out over the city that once ignored him, and added softly, "Now they're finally awake." The quiet laughter that followed wasn't of bitterness, but of peace. The kind of peace a soldier finds when the war, both inside and outside, is finally over. And as the night deepened over Chicago, one man's calm courage continued to echo through every street, every heart, and every home that dared to believe respect could still change the world. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please subscribe, leave a like, and share it, so more people remember that respect is a right, not a privilege.